best practices and worst practices for families and family offices is one of the topics that I think we can all learn from. So the very best practice for a family is to, number one, plan ahead for leadership succession starting on day one. And the really good and really successful families and family offices who think about that leadership succession starting from day one are, they're forward thinking, they're planning ahead, and they're setting themselves up for success. The second tip, if you will, or the second best practice for families and family offices is a culture of open communication and a culture of identifying who they are as a family, what they stand for, not just their value statement, but actually their family story. And one of the things I work with often with families is helping them craft their family story in such a way that it can be told and retold, not haphazardly, but actually intentionally and thoughtfully after consideration, where kids all love bedtime stories and they all want to know their place in the world. And so establishing the, mom and dad came over on a boat and started a small corner store that grew and grew and is now, Whole Foods. And telling it in a way that it is consistent and retellable so that the kids and incoming members of the family by marriage understand where you fit in the ecosystem. It's so funny, I once used that example and somebody in the front row was laughing because his family was Whole Foods. So I have to be careful. But it is, so I would say that is the best practice. And I worked with a family, very famous last name, and the then patriarch, who I think was probably G3, who was an octogenarian, had written a book about his grandfather and his grandfather's story, and really normalized it in both within the family, but also externally to the world. Who are we as a family, and what does it mean to be a member of the Schoenfeld family? The worst practices in a family are the ones where they're so afraid to share information with the next generations that they end up alienating future members of the family, and then you get the inevitable results are either inheritor's guilt, where I didn't do anything to deserve this money, I'm just going to give it away, and the wealth creator is probably rolling over in their grave because they worked so hard and sacrificed so much to create this wealth that the last thing they wanted was just to have it given away by a descendant who didn't identify with the family. The other extreme is the inheritor who basically says, well, I'm just going to spend it on mansions and Maseratis and whatever, and isn't going to be responsible about it. So at the end of the day, the worst practices are failure to communicate, failure to trust with information in an age-appropriate way. You're not going to tell a 6-year-old what your family balance sheet looks like because they don't have the maturity or the foundational information to understand that. But in age-appropriate ways, yes, to start involving and investing in your next generation and engaging them. Maybe set up a junior advisory council where they're sitting at the family board meetings and maybe they don't have a vote, but they have a voice and they get to listen and learn and become part of that. And so I would say that those are my best practices for